So it was a very devastating time personally, but an incredible time in our period of news and what news started to bring these images to us of these sites. But one of my favorite people, when I first moved into Vancouver, I parked my car at a lady who was an eccentric lady who had come here from California during the early days when the forestry industry was big and the foresters would come to town and do their thing, and I would imagine she was part of it. But in those days, the prostitutes of town, instead of putting the money up their arm or into their veins, she was saving her money. So she was buying these houses, and she was living directly across from the new CBC building in this old house, and she was an eccentric old lady who had an old truck, and she would go out and gather cardboard and paper and recycle it, and she would sell it. And she would also go into the dumpsters and behind Safeway and bring out the food, and then she would chop it up and feed men in the neighborhood. So she was still looking after her men. But one day on my way to work, I turned on the news and I heard this story about a woman died in town, and she was a dumpster diver. And a woman? Dumpster diver? Well, I knew right off the bat who it was, because there was only one in that city of Vancouver, one eccentric lady like this. And she was a beautiful lady, and when I parked my car there, it took me a long time to get some trust with her. She was very reclusive and like a stray cat, you know. And finally, one day she opened her wallet in front of me to give me change for parking my car in her backyard, and she had a wad of money. I've never seen so much money in a billfold before. It was one with a chain on it, and so it went in her back pocket. And she wore these old grubby clothes. And now on the way to work this morning, I heard this story in the radio and thought, wow, that must be Nora. And I went into the newsroom, and they were having the meeting in the newsroom for what they were going to do that day. And they were talking about, we just broke the record for murders in Vancouver for the highest amount of murders in that year that broke all the other years' murders. And I'm listening to everybody talking about breaking the record was the focus of the story. And then I said to somebody, what if you found out this was your neighbor who lives across the street from us? And when I explained people who Nora was, all those people passed her house every day or walked out for lunch or went by her house. They remember seeing her truck full of junk, her panel truck, and they never ever remember seeing that woman. And what was so sad was this woman had no relatives, and when the police came to investigate, I saw them by the house. I went over to talk to them because I got to know her and explained to them about her wealth, and I knew that she owned that house, and which is now across from the library, which is like $1 million property. But it ended up she was worth millions, this lady. She had properties all throughout downtown Vancouver, and she was worth millions, but she had no inheritance, and she had no friends or nobody close to her or no relatives. And it was amazing watching them go through her house, and it was very just packed with junk, and it was packed right to the roof, and there were a lot of cockroaches. So the police would go in and they come running out. They say they couldn't take the smell, they couldn't take the cockroaches. But the thing was about that murders, because nobody knew who she was, or she had no relatives, or there was nobody fighting for her, they sort of just let that murder pass. She was just another woman who died. And years later I asked them, did you ever come up with anything? And they said no, they sort of just let that pass. But it's like, here was this beautiful, eccentric lady who was doing her thing, recycling in those days, making money off of it, ends up dead in the dumpster. Her wallet was gone. So it was somebody who killed her just for the money. And to know somebody who was murdered at that level by one of these criminals or these men of, I don't know how to express it, but the saddest part was that nobody did anything about it. Basically because she wasn't attached to anybody, but she was a multimillionaire. That had been our mayor or somebody of known status, I mean, they would have really found out who did it. But it was so sad to hear that they never ever found out who killed Nora.